Hey, Sammy, can you hear me?
Perfectly. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm so happy to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to take part in this interview.
Me too. So tell me a little bit about this documentary of yours.
Sure. So Not Your Average Joe is the title of our project. It is a we were originally considering a short documentary, but after we kind of got through the process and essentially really started putting it together, we realized this could be a much something with a much grander scale. So I think we're just coining it as a normal documentary at this point. It's going to be a little less than an hour long, but essentially it's just all about the life, legacy, and extraordinary career that was Joe Cervello and everything that he did in his life. Because we kind of had me and the creator sort of had this realization. Well, she had the realization about who Joe was, and he wasn't just this artist that everybody obviously knows him for and knows. A lot of people know him and know his work, but they don't know everything else that he did in his life, and that's what essentially coined the term. He's not your average Joe because he's done so much more, and the whole documentary covers everything about his life and what he went through and what he did. And it was a really fun and exciting process to be a part of.
And what made you decide on Joe as a documentary subject?
So Kathy, the creator and director, actually was the one who originally had this idea, and she approached me about it and thought that it could be something, something more. I had worked with Kathy on a previous production of hers. She had sort of a pageant, a live pageant that she wrote, produced, and acted in up at the Baker Mansion. And once we were nearing like the early COVID stages, or I think it was like after the pageant, she was hearing a lot of feedback from people about how great of a show it was, and you should film it so that you can keep it for a while. And when her and I eventually connected, I essentially was the one that helped her kind of like pinpoint this new idea of like, instead of just filming the play, let's sort of treat it almost like it is a script, like a film, like a narrative film. But keep the integrity that is the pageant and the acting the way it was and the scripture exactly as it was. But we were able to film the entire thing in the Baker Mansion. It was a really fun process that I guess she was happy with with how we worked together because she came back to me, and when she mentioned the name Joe Cervello, oddly enough, I knew the name, but not being a true Altoona native. I mean, I think I've lived here a little over almost 2 years now, but I worked at the news station at WTAJ for over 5 years. So I was very familiar with the area and I knew the name. But when she said it, I was like, it's interesting. I know the name and I feel like you saying he's an artist makes sense, but I didn't necessarily know everything that he had done. I had no idea about his mural work. I didn't know that he illustrated children's books. There was just so many layers to this that she started uncovering for me, where I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm kind of curious to like learn more about who this man is. And it all kind of began with that first initial interview that we did with Joe. And the man's turning 92 this year, I think. So when you walk into an interview with, with an older person, you want to be delicate, you want to treat it with care and kindness, and you don't want to like make them uncomfortable. You want to make sure they're giving you what you're looking to get out of it, but also have fun in the process. And I was mildly concerned about this, but the moment we started letting him talk, it was one of the easiest conversations to listen to. He's still such a witty and thorough and just detailed man. He's so easy to listen to, and he just had so many good things to say. And then once we had that, I was like, all right, now we can move forward and we can get all the other interviews, some other people and different perspectives, and compile them all together. So
Nice. And what would you say was the biggest challenge about making it?
Uh, I will say that initially I was a little bit worried about the interview process because it wasn't it wasn't so much a staged documentary in a way where we had like a set that we could bring people into and like kind of set the stage and the sets for each interview ourselves. We were really traveling to just different locations and in some cases to people's homes, and it was a lot of back and forth and a lot of like, who do we need to get next, what's next on the list. But after getting through all of it, I really don't think it was actually as challenging as I thought it was going to be. But the editing stage has definitely been a bear because with the many, many hours of interview footage that we have, and on top of that, all of the artwork that I filmed and captured photos of, all of the archive footage that we were able to to find and use from Joe's past, there was just so much material to sift through. So finding the right way to like organically make it a cohesive story without technically going in complete chronological order of his life, because we didn't want it to be predictable, if that makes sense. But it does bounce around a little bit, but I think we finally nailed like a good structure for this whole thing, and that probably was one of the more challenging processes, I think.
And what do you, without giving too much away, what's one part of it you're most looking forward to everybody seeing?
Ooh, interesting. So I think that I personally am a big fan of all of the archived material that we gained access to, most of which actually was from Joe. He had a variety of all these old VHS tapes that we had to transcode into a digital format so that we could make use of it. But he had interactions with children at the Altoona Library, I think from the 80s, when he used to like do these art classes with kids. He actually, I think, I don't know if it was from him or maybe his sister, but we got footage from when he was in the Navy back in the 50s that was shot in on like Super 8 film. And that was another thing that we transcoded, and we were actually able to get a good like couple minutes out of. And it's all great, great stuff of just young Joe Cervello out in it was in the I believe he was in Okinawa for a good portion of a lot of that, because he went into the Navy and during the Korean War. He found out about the GI Bill and that he could essentially go to college for free if he joined the armed forces. And that's mainly the real reason why he joined the Navy. And I think just encompassing that whole artifact of his life in one little section of this documentary is super interesting. And it's a part of Joe that most people have either never seen or didn't even know about him. So I think that people are really going to come to appreciate that aspect, all the archival things that people maybe didn't realize we captured, or were able to gain access to. All of it's great, and I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that people will be surprised or excited to see.
And what was the most surprising thing you learned?
Ooh, that's another good one too. I learned so much about Joe Cervello, his life, and everything that he did. Like I told you, I knew the name, but I really didn't even know what it meant to, or what Joe Cervello had done. And I think that the Navy aspect was probably one of the cooler things that I learned. But another really interesting aspect I learned about Joe was the fact that he primarily started, like at least in college and shortly thereafter, actually doing a lot of acting. And he ended up being very involved with plays, not just from an acting standpoint. I believe he did some directing work. He built and painted these massive sets that they used on stage. And I believe his words, he was the first actual art director at WPSU. And he was able to sort of harness that idea and go on and do a lot of acting. And he ended up actually doing a play on Broadway for a short period of time. He ended up signing with this Buffalo, New York company where he essentially it was like a full-time job for an actor. It was like with a company where they essentially hired him to do various different things. But that's when he left Altoona for a long time, was to go live this life doing this thing. And it wasn't until maybe it might have been a couple of years, if that, when he realized he wanted to do something more, and that's when he ended up partnering with one of his longtime friends and colleagues, Bill Kotzwinkle, who was a writer, and I believe he also wrote the novelization of E.T., the book for it. But he ended up working very, very closely with William Kotzwinkle for a lot of his up and coming first few books, where Bill wrote them and Joe illustrated them. And when they were in New York, they found a New York publisher that essentially kind of changed their lives forever. And that's what set Joe on his path to, become recognized as an actual artist. And that was just something I never knew.
Incredible. And what's next for you now that this is getting ready to premiere? And I'm so excited for you.
Yeah, well, we're gearing up still. The documentary's done finally. We whenever me and Kathy had we had a meeting, I think either in January or early February, where we kind of had like a crossroad where we could go one way or another. And her point was either we were in crunch time and we try to get this done so that it can debut in April, but we didn't want to wait too long through April because there was a lot of other things going on with various other venues we wanted to potentially try to use for this weekend long event we wanted to do. So it was either that or we wait until like November. And I agreed that we could get it done by April, but it'd be crunch time. So Kathy and I met, every 2 days or so to just sit for a few hours and just try to get some editing work done. And we finally got it done. So now we're gearing up for the premiere Friday, April 12th at Arts Altoona. And there's the weekend long celebration to go with it. Saturday, there's going to be an art walk through downtown Altoona, looking at a bunch of Joe's work, but not just exclusively his, but a lot of other local Altoona artists. And then Sunday, one of the private collectors that we interviewed is donating a bunch of his Altoona Railroad based works so that it can be displayed as like a private gallery at the Railroaders Museum on Sunday. And the film will be screening there for 2 days as well. So it'll be a busy weekend, but we're really excited for that. And I think what's next is probably to potentially revisit the doc for like a little bit more. We talked about maybe making a shorter condensed version that maybe would be more film festival friendly. But we also might leave it as it is. There's some final decisions still need to be made there, but we'd love to potentially see this doc have a festival run and see, especially local festivals, play like some, like even people that are local will know the name Joe Cervello. So I'm sure locally it'll do great, but even beyond, just across the US and see where it can go and what it can do. But once that's all said and done, on to the next project, I guess. Don't really have a next project in mind as of yet, but I'm sure there'll be something.
Where can people see it? Where can people see the documentary?
Well, so we're premiering it at Arts Altoona at the Sanctuary. Sorry, my cat's walking all over my desk right now.
It's okay. Hi, cat.
Come here, buddy. Let's get down. Come on.
And who's this buddy that we have? Is he a fellow documentary maker?
Yeah, he's been a part of the editing process for sure. This is Charlie.
Hi, Charlie.
And he's been a desk hog throughout most of this editing process, so he's been involved. So the film's going to premiere 8 p.m. at Arts Altoona Friday, April 12th. And then it's going to screen, I think, at 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. at the Railroaders Museum on Sunday, April 14th. And I believe we're going to have some DVDs for sale for people who might want to take a copy home with them, just first come, first serve, limited quantity type thing. But I don't think we're going to necessarily release it like online on YouTube or to the public right away, just because we want to let it have a film festival run potentially. And a lot of festivals are a little bit picky with like the way you release things, and they don't want something often that's already been released publicly online. So for that sake alone, I think we're going to probably wait on releasing it to the public. And, anybody who wants to, buy a copy for themselves on a DVD will probably have that available for people.
Very nice. And if there's any way I can help, let me know. I can get you connected with some people if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'd really appreciate that. By the way, if you wanted to have a conversation with Kathy about a lot of this, she might have a mildly different perspective, considering this is her baby and this was her idea and her story. I can send you her email so that
Yes, definitely.
you'd like to, contact her and, figure out a separate time if you wanted to talk to her more about it. But but yeah, no, it's been such a fun and exciting process, and I believe, if I'm right, that Joe will actually be attending the premiere on Friday, April 12th as well. So he's been hearing a lot of great feedback from people just on the trailer alone, and he's been thanking us up and down. And he actually, as a thank you, he gave me and Kathy some original paintings that he did as a, just right after the fact as a thank you. So it's, I
That's
think one of
amazing.
the coolest things also that I learned was the fact that he has macular generative disease. I think that's what it's called.
Oh,
He's slowly
macular
losing.
degeneration. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. He's slowly losing his eyesight. But despite that, and despite his age, he still does a couple hours of artwork every single day, and it's part of his daily routine. And he'll continue to do that, for who knows how long, because that's just what he loves to do. And I think that's the thing that really makes Joe who he is. He never did his artwork for some bigger picture or for some, claim to fame or anything like that. He only ever did it because he loved every second of doing it. And that's something that everybody should appreciate.
Incredible. And people should appreciate you just like I do. Jay, it's been a pleasure. I can't wait to talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope to see you next weekend if you want to come out at all for either the premieres or the events. They're all open to the public. I think Sunday is just regular Railroaders Museum admission fees, but the Arts Altoona is completely open to the public. I think that they're taking donations or something like that. But would love to see you there if you can make it. It'd be a lot of
I
fun.
will try. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. You have a wonderful weekend.
Yep, you as well.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.